I backpedaled right away. I'm like, well, that's a lot of work and you have to raise a lot of money and I'm not sure I want to. And he said, well, I don't care if there's a documentary about me. I'm just saying if there's going to be one, you're going to have to do it.
Right.
So I brought my husband, who's a video guy, in on it with me. I asked him if he would do it. And when he said yes, then I went to my friend Connie Nelson and asked her if, she thought we should do it. And she was very enthusiastic and offered to help. And of course I took her up on that. And then I just started begging favors for the next 5 years from everybody that knows Guy.
Right.
The best part about it though, is that working on the book and the film and getting to know Guy and his friends brought me Terry and Joe Harvey. So I'm very happy about that.
Exactly. Wonderful. Let me ask you, Terry and Joe Harvey, how did you, when did you first meet Guy, and how did your friendship with him develop? Can you tell the audience that story?
Yeah, I met Guy at Kerrville Folk Festival. I forget which year, but it was in the late 70s, early 80s. And we rode in a van from the hotel to the gig and kind of stayed friends from then on. It was, we had one of those evenings that lasted forever, as far as all of the possibilities kind of. And, but we just, then we started crossing tracks with each other in hotels, lobbies and airports. And Guy would play up here. He'd play in Colorado a lot. He played in, whenever he had a gig kind of in New Mexico or Colorado or close by, he would come and stop and stay a couple of days. And so we, I think also we all went to Italy together and did a kind of a rolling gig over there. Mm-hmm. That kind of cemented a lot of our friendship. He and his son Travis was playing bass with him then at that time.
Right, yeah. And Joe Harvey, were you with them when Terry first met Guy, or was it later?
I was, but the first time I really, keyed in on Guy was standing. Terry and I were off stage at Incesto at the Only a Hobo Festival. Mm-hmm. And Guy was singing "If I Ever Get Off of That LA Freeway Without Getting Killed or Caught." And it just blew me away. And it blew me right to our own journey. Me and Terry, 2 years before Guy and Susanna left LA, I can still remember that curve, looking back at LA. It saved our life at the time to get out alive. And Terry had written that song about leaving LA on a cloudy day, pushing the crowd away. We're going to get away. Right. And turn on the radio to your rock and roll all the way. And I just had this connection. And then Guy and I happened to walk back along the Kachina River that night after the Only Hobo Festival. And we just started talking. It was such a beautiful evening. And I realized I didn't even know then how much in common we really had. Uh-huh. But we just became instant friends on that long walk to the Three Kings Hotel. Right. Hit it off immediately.
Wonderful. I'd like to talk a little bit about Guy and his music. I mean, one of the key things in his career was, this kind of disdain he had for Nashville commercial music. And then getting involved in the Austin music scene and kind of the outlaw scene with Towns and oh my God, I'm blanking on names. I'm sorry. But anyway, I mean, in the film, you do it really, really well when you show the Look magazine article in 1971 about the shift in the music, and then the Luckenbach Texas sequence also really, really moves in that direction. And I was just wondering if, any of the three of you could talk a little bit about that, you know, how the scene changed and how that Austin music scene came about. Because I think it's a great and fascinating change in country music.
Well, I think, you know, in the 70s, they had a radio format called progressive country. And they definitely had that in Austin. I don't think they had it in Nashville, but there were, you know, a lot of college towns that had progressive country radio stations. And then that kind of went away. And in the 90s, what used to be called progressive country now is called Americana. And that all started with Gavin magazine, which is a radio trade magazine, started a Gavin chart primarily to cover this music, this progressive country, now Americana music. And because of that chart, an organization was born, and festivals and clubs, and, you know, there just became this industry around it. And that had a big part of lifting Guy into a bigger spotlight, so to speak. It's still a niche, you know, it's not like mainstream country, but there was now a business to support it. And at the same time, Guy stopped recording the way mainstream Nashville recorded. You know, he went back to his folk singing roots. His first album that he liked was Old Friends, which came out in 1989. And the Gavin chart started a few years later. So, and from that point on is really when Guy started doing what he wanted to do. And I think you can say that's true with all artists. Once you really listen to your own gut and do what you want to do, that's when things fall into place. And they certainly did for Guy. So, you know, Guy was born in 1941, and he was a young man in the 60s during, you know, the folk years. What was happening in Greenwich Village was happening in the Montrose neighborhood in Houston, and that's where Guy met Townes and Jerry Jeff Walker and other folk singers of that era. Right.
Gotcha. And Terry, were you involved in those early days as well?
In kind of a half-assed way, I was. We were in LA all of the 60s, and that's where I first started writing songs and thinking about music. But I went to art school, and so it was it was all kind of very much tied together, whether it was visual art, whether it was making music, theater, whatever, and like the labels we're talking about, Americana and folk music and all, I think Guy, you know, Guy and I both had probably were called so many different types of songwriters or musicians, or what our music was, that you learn fairly early on, I think, not to pay attention to that. That it wasn't about that, and it wasn't about meeting some kind of a deadline of what a song ought to be or when it should be. It was about the song always. And I think that was the thing that was kind of the hallmark of that group of people that came out of that time, and people that kind of circulated certainly around Guy when he went to Nashville, and Guy and Townes. But it was a take on music that was true. You know, to make a song that's a true song, and I think that held throughout the period. You know.
Gotcha. Right. Amara, have we got any interesting questions? We want to throw it to the audience for a second and see what the audience wants to ask.
Right now, we just have a couple general questions about the terminology that we were talking about, progressive country. Somebody's asking where the Burrito Brothers stuff would lie in some of that, and if we're looking at 1980 or earlier era.
I think the Burrito Brothers definitely fall in that, but it was a time when, you know, things weren't defined, but, you know, they're definitely played on what we now call Americana stations and what was once called progressive country stations. That's where their music is played. And if you went into a record store and wanted to find them, that's the bin that you would look in.
Yeah, I think too, like they were kind of an LA band that came out like with Graham Parsons, and there was a band that prior to the Burrito Brothers called the International Submarine Band that I have no idea how they could classify it. They would stick it in bluegrass, they'd stick it in folk music, they'd stick it in rock and roll, and never could quite figure it out. And I think that was kind of a keynote and kind of an anticipation of what was going to happen with a lot of this music, you know.
Gotcha. Tamara, I got a film question for you.
Okay.
One of the elements I really love in the film are the drawings and the animations. And can you tell me how you arrived at the decision to do that, and maybe tell us who the artist was?
Sure.
I mean, there's just, what I love about them is there's kind of a loosey-goosey nature to the drawings. And at other times there's kind of a more lyrical, poetic aspect to them. But it works so well in terms of, you know, how you're telling the story. But it also gives a real sense of Guy's character and the crazy life that they were living at the time. So the drawings, they're just wonderful, wonderful.
I think so too. And the artist is Mel Chin. And Mel was a student at Vanderbilt University in the early 70s when Guy and Susanna and Townes were living together in East Nashville. And Mel hung out with them.
Yeah.
And Mel would make these little drawings similar to that about, you know, the drunk nights they had together.
Right.
And then Mel became, you know, a pretty well-known artist, but I got in touch with him and asked him if he would go back to that, what you referred to as loosey-goosey drawing style for the film. The first time I went to Guy's house, he pulled out those old Mel Chin drawings to show me.
Okay.
So they always stuck with me, and I used a couple of them in my book. So Mel was teaching at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. And so he and his class worked on those scenes. And basically what we did is I wrote the 4 scenes that we use and asked him to illustrate those scenes. Those 4 scenes were, to Paul and I, those 4 scenes were really important in telling the story and establishing the relationship between Guy and Townes and Susanna. Mm-hmm. But of course, back then they didn't have phones where they were taking pictures and video of everything. Yeah. So I knew the stories, but we didn't have illustrations. So I basically wrote the scenes, sent them to Mel, and he and his kids, college students, not kids, but they did those drawings and animations for us. And yeah, I love them too. And it was really fun for us to have Mel as part of it because he was with Guy and Townes and Susanna back at that time.
Absolutely. No, that's fantastic. I mean, I didn't realize that he knew them way back when. So that's what a great source to draw from, for sure. You know, yeah. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and it's almost like it's another character in the film, and that's TR, the tape recorder.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever it comes on the screen, I just get so delighted, you know, with that funny little tape recorder that you've labeled TR. But some of the, you know, you just feel like you're with them. You know, all you're looking at, for God's sakes, is a silly tape recorder on the screen. But the voice is so wonderful. I mean, you just feel like you're in the moment with them, and whenever you use it, it's both at good times and also at bad times, like when Townes and Guy argue. But it's another great element, I think. And you know, could you talk a little bit how you came to decide to do it that way?
Yeah, and I'm really glad to hear you say that, because every single filmmaker other than you that we talked to tried to dissuade us from doing that. And really? I was just like, I'm sorry, we're doing it. I don't care if it's wrong. I don't care if everybody hates it. We are doing this. Absolutely. TR is what Susanna named her tape recorder. And I mean, you only hear a few of the recordings in the film, but I listened to hundreds of those recordings.
Oh, I bet.
And this is what she did. She would just set the tape recorder down when people were over, or she would talk to it on her own. And to me, listening to those tapes, you know, I really wanted this story to be from Susanna's point of view and to have Susanna's heart and soul in it. And the way to do that was with those recordings, in my opinion. And I'm really glad that we did. And And yeah, some people were, in the editing process and everything, it was like, well, do we really want to just have this tape recorder here? And I was like, yes, we do, because I want people to listen. I don't want them to be distracted by what's on the screen. I want them to listen. I want them to read the words,
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, that was really important to me.
No, I mean, kudos to you, because you really do listen hard, because all you're doing is watching the tape recorder, But at the same time, it's kind of this artifact of Susanna, and you just feel like, that's hers. She just turned it on, and she's doing the recording right now. It has that kind of immediacy to it in the film, which is so wonderful, so wonderful.
Thank you.
Joe Harvey, can I ask you? Susanna, she's such an amazing persona. I mean, she's so striking. I mean, this love story, between her and Guy and Townes, which is the centerpiece of the film. But it so revolves around Susanna. I mean, can you talk about her a little bit, Joe Harvey, just, because you were friends, and what was your impression of Susanna, and how did she work this kind of magic wand, as someone says in the film,
honest.
Especially, what's that?
She was honest.
Okay.
She was pretty brilliant, and she was a smart ass, and she was fun and beautiful, beautiful woman, and loving. She was very loving, but she was a smart ass with an edge, but a heart of gold. I mean, I really loved Susanna. And Susanna loved both of those men, and in very different ways, which I thought Tamara and Paul showed so well in the film. Which made it so easy to understand. And she was very frank about how she felt in front of Guy, in front of anyone. And it was just a true love story between three incredible, talented people, I thought the film was wonderful in showing that. I think some people might have been judgmental, but I think they wouldn't be if they saw the film, because it was so honest and so beautiful. And and we watched the progression, of Susanna. She was here the anniversary of the first year of Townes' death. And we were having a party, and she was all excited about the party. And she could not even get dressed that day to come to the party. She was in Terry's studio, which is close to the house. And she wanted to go to the party, and she was upset she couldn't, but she couldn't. But I thought that Tamara and Paul, they showed equally her brilliant side, and how she really rubbed off on both of those songwriters, because she was one of them. They were all together.
Right. No, it's a really remarkable relationship between the three of them. It is, I think, in many ways, the most striking element in the film. Their story together. The film also has a couple of wonderful little moments about songwriting that I was wondering if you could talk about a little bit. One of them is when Guy tells a story about hitting on a phrase, and if you hit on a phrase, you have to write it down immediately. So when he thought of, if I can just get off this LA freeway without getting caught or killed, he wrote it down immediately with Susanna's eyeliner and on an old piece of paper, and had it in his wallet for 2 years, is what the film tells. It's a great story. But I just thought it was a great songwriting tip. And the other tip I love is Townes says that a song has to work as a poem written on a page before it can become a song. Both of those things are so simple, but they seem so insightful to me in terms of writing music. Terry, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, or maybe do you have any little kind of tricks, little kind of keys that help you creating a song?
You know, it is such a mystery to me how a song happens. I have drawers full of lines, full of words, full of, written on matchbooks, written on the backs of, whatever, back of my hand sometimes, probably more than half of the songs I've written in a car, just starting it in the car with that rhythm of the motion and rhythm of tires and the monotony of it. You start, a song starts. Guy and I, wrote a couple of things together, and we always had a great time arguing, because we would argue for 3 days over a word, over like love. Would the word be love or should it be like, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And so, at the bottom of it, I think even what Towns is saying about it being a poem, there's something that happens that's not describable that happens when it goes to words, then to music. It's, even if it's happening at the same time, it's such a kind of miracle.
Yeah. Right.
So
I know. It is a really amazing skill and talent, and Guy and Towns had it in spades for sure.
Yeah, and it's always a risk too. That's one thing about writing. Like, every time it's an empty page that you're starting with, so you're kind of starting over every time. So there isn't a way to do it, I don't think. If there's a way to do it, you're probably doing it wrong.
Right.
And I know Guy, when we were in Italy, I don't want to say risk, we gambled a lot. We shot pool a lot, threw pitch pennies and stuff like that. But Guy used to carry around all these little Swiss Army knives, little bitty miniature Swiss Army. And that's what we would play for. And he was a lousy gambler because I've still got a drawer full of Swiss Army knives. And I would little bitty ones, little.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, unbelievable.
Yeah.
There was Guy talks about his integrity in the film, and he even calls it a curse in a way, and it's so many times when, I don't know, could you guys talk a little bit about Guy's integrity? It was so deep rooted in him, anything that seemed to intrude on what he thought was his artistic, thought, idea, he just could not deal with it in any way. Could you guys talk about a little bit about that aspect of Guy's character? Because in many ways it became a real roadblock for his career in some ways.
He was just he was a songwriter, and he was true to the song that he was writing, and it was in a time where I guess it was supposed to go somewhere or do something or whatever. But I always thought things happened just exactly like they were supposed to happen, when it came to Guy's music, because I thought he always held true to his songs, and he, if he recorded a song he wasn't happy with, he bitched about it the rest of his life, and like drums in the film.
Drums.
Drums.
What is it with the drums? Why did he hate drums so much?
Because he was a folk singer.
Folk singer.
Folk
Yeah,
singers do have drums.
I think, because Guy was living in Nashville and they were trying to force the square peg of Guy Clark into the round hole of commercial country music. And that's just not what Guy was. And he went along with it for a while because he wanted to record and he wanted to release his music. But it just wasn't him. And the drums, obviously, the first question when Guy and I started working on the book, one of the first questions I asked him was about recording and, how he liked to record. And he, I won't use the exact words, but it was basically no drums.
You
Well,
know,
it's actually, it's a wonderful little thread that you wove through the film, because it keeps coming up. You know, it was like drums was some kind of a Satan, you know, running after Guy and not letting him do what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually kind of sad in the scene with Rodney Crowell, and he talks about wanting to produce, you know, a record for Guy, and it turned into a disaster in the studio because, you know, Rodney kept trying to force him into that square peg, as you say, you know, and Guy didn't want it. He couldn't deal with it, you know. It's so interesting to me how, you know, even with a friend who was trying to help him out, it was still, you know, I'm not going to cross that, you know, there's a line in the sand here and I ain't going beyond that, you know.
Well,
And when he did, when he compromised, it just made him so unhappy.
yeah, although we have those songs, and you know, the fact that those songs exist,
Yeah.
to me, it was, you know, I don't know what Guy would really say, but to me, all those albums he did that he didn't like, I'm still glad he did them because we have those recordings, and I think they're so valuable.
I agree 100%. I really do. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I think it took doing those to make the next ones that he made. You know, I think that he had to be that frustrated to kind of get through those periods. And when he finally said, "This is what I'm going to do. This is what I am," then, you know, it was locked in from then on.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, I mean, you know, as you watch the film and you realize that when he did start, when he finally said, okay, I'm a folk singer and I'm going to record with these labels that's going to respect my music, you know, that's when he just really took off, you know, and you can see how much happier he became working with those folks and doing things the way he wanted to.
And I tell you, you know, guys always got to, of course, deserve credit for being a songwriter, but he was a great singer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was so amazing to hear him sing his songs.
Yes.
You know, we went out several times and just did song swaps, and it was like just so amazing to sit and watch him sing his songs. You know, and his voice was like the voice of those songs that, you know, that I mean, other people do the songs and they do them great and whatever, but nothing like he did them to me.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
no, I think like what I said about Susanna being honest,
Mm-hmm.
I think when you listen to Desperados Waiting for a Train and some of those songs, you know, you hear some songs, oh yeah, they caught that rhyme. Yeah, they did it, they rhymed. But, you know, I think those songs that were true are so honest. And I think that's what people related to a lot in songs. Yeah. I mean, I remember the first time that I heard a Guy Clark, Desperados Waiting for a Train, and it reminded me of my own grandpa and how lucky you are if you have some old man in your life like that. And it was so moving to me. But I think it's because it was honest. And I think all good work that tells the truth is the best work, because then other people can recognize that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, for me, Randall's Knife works the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the beautiful things in the film, I thought, was how the Desperados kind of went around, and at the end, you're hearing it and you're seeing Guy as that old man, you know.
Yeah.
And hearing
that's true.
Words, it's really a beautiful moment to me.
No, I agree. It is. It's a very moving moment in the film when that arrives. Yeah, I agree totally. A lovely moment, Tamra.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sure.
Steve Earle makes a wonderful comment in the film, I think, and it's about Susanna. You know, and he says, you know, Guy and Townes taught him and everybody else how to write songs, but Susanna taught them how to be artists. You know, can you guys talk a little bit about that? What was it about Susanna that, you know, that you know, I don't know, made him? Why would Steve say that? Why? What was it about Susanna that she would bring to them?
She didn't care about cleaning her brushes.
There it is.
Held the party together.
There you go.
Definitely held the party together.
Yeah.
So Steve or someone in the film mentioned that, you know, they would kind of look to her. She just held it together with her spirit, and she was an artist, you know, she was full tilt.
Yeah. I mean, I love that about the film too, Tamra, that, you know, you do really pay tribute to her skills as a songwriter and as an artist. I mean, that really comes through. You know, she's a fully rounded, you know, individual in the film in that regard. You know, it's nice to see the success that she had, like when Emmylou was recording her songs and they're using her paintings for their album covers, and you know, it's really nice that that's brought out in the film in that way. Well,
I think Guy and Townes have become such mythic figures, you know, and Susanna's voice got lost in that, you know, not in their circle of friends and artists. Of course, everybody, Susanna was a muse and everybody knew her, but in the larger world, I think Guy and Townes just took up so much of the oxygen. And so it was important to me that Susanna get her day. And not only that, but, you know, her ending was so long and painful and tragic to me. And I didn't want everybody to just think of her that way, you right. know. In her last years, you know, I met Guy the year after Townes died, and so I didn't know the Susanna that everybody else knew, and I watched her decline. And you know, and there were a lot of people in Nashville that just referred to her as crazy, and it always bothered me, you know, always bothered me. And so, you know, Susanna wasn't crazy. She was grieving. She had a lot of pain in her life. And that does not negate all of the beautiful things she did during that life. And that was important for me to show that. Yeah. Well, I think you did it really, really well. I really do. You know. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Can I ask a question? The end of the film, I think, is so beautiful. You know, when I first saw the rough cut, Tamra, you know, it was still a little bit unshapely. It was kind of on shaky ground in some ways. But I think what you finally arrived at in the cut works so beautifully. Between how you lay out Guy writing the Crow song, then joking about wanting to put his ashes up the goat's ass that Terry is going to make a sculpture of, and seeing the box of ashes at the memorial. And then finally, you know, at the end, the Crow sculpture with no commentary. It's just the sound effects and those beautiful, beautiful images of the crow that you made, Terry. I mean, it works fabulously, and I get it completely. But I know that some people still want to know, Terry, how did the goat become a crow?
Well, the goat was a joke. It was all, you know. It was just, I mean, I liked it so much. I thought you were going to do it for him. You know, for years, Guy would, you know, say, "I want you to put just a second."
Oh,
such pros, such pros we are.
Oh man. Well, we'll have to wait. We'll have to wait for Terry to come back. Oh, here he is. Okay.
At least you saw that I had my pants on. No, so over the years we just jive each other, and he would say, you know, I think the first time he saw any of my sculpture was when we were doing the landmine things for Landmine Free World, and we did a gig in San Diego, and I had a piece there, and I took Guy and showed it to him. It was a tree. Then we saw some other pieces of mine wherever we would play that I might have a piece. And so he would start saying, well, I want my ashes in something like that. I want, you know. And that's where the goat came from. I said, I'm just going to do a goat and shove your ashes up its ass. But his response was always like perfect, perfect.
Oh,
So
Look
But-
at his ring and roll his cigarette and say, perfect.
then,
right.
then when he was failing, when toward I guess the last couple of years, when he was still out, and whenever they were around Lubbock, they would go to the Windmill Museum in Lubbock. And in that Windmill Museum, which is a phenomenal museum, it's every kind of windmill you can imagine. But there were two nests that were in the tops of these windmills that were from the Dust Bowl days, from the Depression, that were crow's nests made out of barbed wire and wire and stuff. And they were very beautiful. And Guy got, in a way, kind of got obsessed with those nests, because just about every time I talked to him on the phone, he would say, he would talk about this song that he was writing about these crow's nests, but he couldn't get it right. And so we had to just, to me, it wasn't about the song, even what he was talking about, which I mentioned in the movie. It was about what was happening to him. It was kind of like he was kind of dealing with what was happening to his body, and so when he died, and I got the ashes, and I should have done a goat, but this crow was prevalent, and then I was present, and I went to a place called Uncommon Objects in Austin, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I must have had the ashes here for about a year, I think, just trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do. And I found a stuffed crow in Uncommon Objects. And so I kept going back. I went back about 5 or 6 times to if I should buy this thing. And then finally I just bought it. And but that's what became kind of the model for the piece. And the ashes were poured right into the cauldron, so that the crow itself is made out of ashes. And then I opened up the chest and put the rest of the ashes inside, so it's like an urn too. And it's sat here for quite a while. Guy used to always say he loved a certain spot here, and we'd go out and talk there and look out over at the mountains and stuff. And so I thought for a while about keeping it, just keeping it, and putting it in that spot. But the longer I had it, the more I started thinking that it should be everybody's. It should belong to it didn't belong to me. And so I called Bill Whitliff at the Whitliff Museum in San Marcos, and Bill was really excited about wanting to take it and whatever. Then, of course, Bill passed away literally a week after we'd talked, and his I guess the person who's director now, David Coleman, Bill had told about it, and so they wanted it, and so that's where it is.
Oh, okay.
We drove it down.
Something amazing about that, and you'll see it in the film when there's a close-up of the crow.
Yeah.
You see gold. The patina had a mix of Guy's ashes in it, and when the patina was put on it, the ashes were gold. Outside, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
And the
I noticed
piece
it in
really-
the shot. You can see it in the shots.
Yeah, and the piece is really spectacular. I mean, the footage does not do it justice. You have to see it in person, and people can do that by going to the Whitliff. And everybody should go see it. It's really just breathtaking.
Oh, definitely. No, I want to go see it at some point for sure.
Well,
But-
and then Rodney finished the song.
And Rodney did the song, yeah.
And I think it's probably, I guess, Guy's last song, or his last song.
It is, yeah.
It is, yeah. No,
And
it's really wonderful.
And Rodney made it. I mean, that
Yes.
song really came together.
Beautiful.
And I think he got to play it for Guy right before Guy died. And Guy loved that blues lick that he did. So,
Oh, great, great.
And in the end, when everybody is sitting around a campfire at night, it was probably after midnight, but Steve Earle said, okay, here's the guitar, and let's pass it around and do a song that you think Guy would like to hear. And 3 people did songs that they had written about Guy that no one, we hadn't heard.
Right. Oh man, that's fantastic. Fantastic.
yeah, well,
Amara, are there any other questions from the audience?
This conversation has been so wonderful and thorough that I think we've answered pretty much all of the questions just through your own questioning.
Okay. So Tamara, Terry, Joe, Harvey, we're getting to the end here. I just wanted, are there anything else you want to bring up or talk about Guy or the film?
I do. I want to tell y'all a story that happened about 20 minutes outside of Monahan's.
Okay.
After Guy had passed away, and Terry, I looked out and there was a bad sandstorm, and the country is just ugly, flat, brown there, and a sandstorm to boot. And honest to God, there was just this big angel, this white angel in the sand. You couldn't tell if it was an angel or a ghost. And what it really was, I think, was an old white garbage plastic bag or something that was flapping in the wind. And Terry and I just cracked up and we said, oh my God, we will never get rid of Guy. He is here to stay. We still don't know if he's an angel or a ghost.
Driving in, and you couldn't see anything except just kind of barely. It's like a whiteout.
Right.
Except this shimmering kind of white thing out there, which big garbage bag. but it was so perfect.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what Guy would have said. It's perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, I have to say, Tamara, again, in terms of Guy's background, the childhood scenes and his parents and the woman who taught him how to play the guitar, those are lovely little moments in the film. It works so well. And I love how you did the photographs. You did it in an unusual and different way, which made it visually so much more interesting, I thought. But they were just, and again, you decided, I'm not going to do chronology. You don't start with Guy being born. I love the fact that you do that, but do these flashbacks to those places that meant so much to him. The seacoast of Texas or Monahans. It's wonderfully woven in. It really is.
Well, we have, Guy, thankfully, as a journalist, I'm really happy that Guy wasn't such a pack rat. Because he kept everything. And when I started working on the book, he encouraged me to look under the bed and go through all the drawers. And, I turned his house upside down. And then his sisters, who owned the house in Rockport, where Guy grew up, they had kept all of their mom's papers. Their mom was a genealogist. And so they let me go through everything in the Rockport house too.
Wow,
and so, there was so much material that I got from the family. And Guy, until he got really sick the last couple of years, his memory was really so great. And so my interviews with him were, just wonderful. And Guy really wanted me to get this book done. And so he, I was resisting all along because it was hard work, but he, would call me if I hadn't been there in a few days and tell me to get my ass over there. So, because we had work to do. And you know, he really pushed me and he had the goods. So the, you know, the subject, I had a wonderful subject and a wonderful human to work with all throughout, which was great.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, you made me think of another question I wanted to ask you. It's another thing that's interesting about the film to me is we hear Guy's voice through, you know, 3/4 of it, and we don't see him on camera until the very end with around Susanna's death.
Yeah.
And I was just curious, did you have Guy on camera the whole time, or was it just audio recordings?
No, we had him on camera most of the time. However, we were interviewing Guy on camera in 2014 and 2015, and he was quite ill. And when you see him finally towards the end of the film, even to me who saw him every day, it was jarring how bad he looked. And we didn't want to take people out of the moment in time and keep coming back to, you know, old sickly Guy.
Yes.
So that was a creative choice that Paul and I talked about a lot. And we were just like, you know what, we are just going to see young Guy, hear Guy's voice, and not see him until Susanna, you know, the end of Susanna's life.
Right.
Because seriously, it was just jarring to see him, you know, on camera.
Well, I understand totally. I think it's a great decision that you made, and a very brave one. So I applaud you for that. So that when he does come on at the end, it's almost a kind of a gift to see him, you know, in his decline. You know, you can accept, you know, the vestiges of illness that you see him then, you know, and it even makes it more moving that, you know, that's when we finally see him speak. So I think you solved a technical problem, but you also made it into an aesthetic plus, my dear.
Thank you.
It's beautiful. It really is.
Coming from you, that means a lot. I'm a big fan of yours, as you know.
Yes. No, well, likewise. Well, guys, if there's anything else you want to talk about, I think we're good.
There are a couple of questions actually that just came in.
Oh, okay.
One is, do any of you know what happened to all of Guy and Susanna's paintings, writings, and other belongings? Is there a museum collection somewhere, or did somebody keep and catalog everything?
Most of Guy's stuff is at the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville. Susanna, some of her paintings are at the Hall of Fame, but her paintings were willed to her family, so her family has that. And Guy's paintings were willed to his family. He has 2 grandkids and a great-grandson as of a couple weeks ago. So they're with the family.
Mm-hmm. Great.
That's great. Yeah. And then the other question is for you, Tamara, specifically. Will you be taking this film to festivals and getting this historic documentary about these iconic figures to a wider audience?
Yes, we're trying. We debuted at South by Southwest a couple weeks ago, or last week, I don't even know when it was. And we are doing our own virtual screenings through the month of April, ticketed virtual screenings. And then we're going to do a theater tour later this summer and this fall. And then at some point we will go on demand. There are a couple festivals we're going to do, but I can't announce those right now just because the festivals don't want us to. So we will be getting it out there. This is brand new. The people that saw it for this gathering are very early viewers. If you want to follow along with us, our website is withoutgettingkilledorcaught.com. And also, if you sign up for our newsletter there, this is my promotion piece, but it's worth it. Let me tell you, it's going to be worth it because there's a very rare recording of Guy from 1964 singing the first song he ever wrote, Step Inside My House. And you can get that at our website. Nice. So yeah, we don't know what's going to happen with the film, but I have a great team and we're working on getting it out there now.
Excellent. Well, it should get out there. I hope everybody gets a chance to see it for sure, because it's just wonderful. It really is.
Thank you.
And really, guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight and doing this for our CCA members. I'm sure that we're going to get some good feedback. Anything I get, I'll pass on to you guys. Me or Amara will do that. So, and at some point soon, Terry and Joe Harvey, we're going to get together.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And yeah, Tamara.
Tamara.
And
Hey, I can't wait to come to Santa Fe to see you guys.
Yeah,
we can't
seriously.
wait either. We'll have a nice evening for sure.
Yes, can't
All
wait.
right.
Yeah.
Well, again, thank you all so much, and take
Thank
care. We'll
you.
be in touch.
You.
You. Bye.